Hey, how's it going, awesome humans? So I came across this lot with a bunch of cool old cars, all original actually, original paint, everything. So I thought it would be good to do a tutorial on bringing that out in a way that's true to the era. And so I'm gonna go for more of a filmic look, not so much faded, but more of a filmic look, and a soft gradient, soft blue gradient for the sky. The two cars in the main photo I'm going to be focusing on are an Edsel Ranger and an old Ford Falcon. And the colors of the cars kind of contrast each other. One's red, one's got a bluish white, and it just went together really well, just how it was. And I got down real low. There's some distortion I need to fix manually. That the lens distortion correction will not like completely get me where I want to go. So I'll show you what I do in Photoshop. I'll take it out to Photoshop and bring it back in. But the main focus of this is just getting the color that I want and just that look that serves these old cars in the right way, rust and everything. So check this out. These are some cars I discovered about an hour away from home at a family picnic. I took a bunch of photos here. This is an Edsel, and this one is a Ford Falcon. Pretty trashed Ford Falcon. I just thought they were pretty sexy cars, so I got down real low with my 24 to 120, and that's why I'm gonna fix this in Photoshop. Then that's why this angle is so extreme here. So I'm going to start in camera calibration, leave it on Adobe Standard. I'm going to drop my reds down to -10. It's just something I always do. And bring my greens, change the hue of my greens, +50. And my blues minus around 30. I'm going to change the tone of the sky here, more of a teal color. Then we're going to move up to color. I'm going to bump the reds up. The hue, I'm going to bump it up to 20, around 20. Doesn't have to be exact here. I'm just changing the hue of the red just a little bit. And then I'm going to boost that to +10. And I'm going to play with the luminance a little bit. Pull it down to -5. You can see I exposed for the sky here. Because of this really cool cloud formation, I didn't want my whites to be blown out. So I underexposed it a little bit so I could bring this back here and leave that how it is. So moving on, I'm going to go to my oranges, just change the hue a little bit here and drop it down a little bit, about 30 or so. And that one I'm going to bump the luminance up. There's not a whole lot of orange going on here. As you can see, it's down here mainly where the rust is, and that's what I'm doing here, this rust. The rust on the cars, I'm just trying to bring that out. There's some on the wheel there, and you can see if I turn it off and on, not a huge difference. Pull the luminance down a little bit, move on to the yellows. I'm going to dump some yellow here more towards the orange and pull the saturation down a little bit, maybe to 20 or so. Leave the luminance alone with that. Move on to the greens, and I'm going to continue moving these greens more towards like the bluish greens here. It seems about right. There's not a whole lot of green here. But this right here, I want to desaturate that a little bit and make it a little bit more of a hunter green. So I'm going to pull that down to about 80. And onto the aquas, I'm going to just pull that up a little bit more away from the green and pull it down, -35. And the luminance, I'm going to pull this way down to like 60 or so. Onto the blues, I'm going to leave the hue alone because I already got my teal color there from messing with the camera calibration. So I'm going to leave that how it is. I'm pretty happy with that blue. I'm just going to pull the saturation down a little bit, and you'll see why in a second here when we move up further. I tend to move from the bottom up here, mess with the colors and the tone, and then I get the actual exposure, and I work from that. Because what I'm about to do after the HSL, I'm going to boost the overall color. And the purple and the magenta, I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm going to move up to the tone curve, and I'm going to make a few points here. Pull these highlights down just a tad, just a little bit. I'm going to move this down here a little more. Bump up the brightness a little bit here. Kind of a very, very subtle S-curve. And then I'm gonna bring up the blacks a little bit. And right now that looks extreme, but it's not going to be in a minute here. So I like the white balance. The white balance is daylight, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna bump the contrast up to about 60 or so. This probably is looking pretty ugly right now to you, but I have a photo in mind, and I already did these the exact same way. So this is pretty much, I'm working off of what I did to these other images with the color and the highlights and shadows and everything. So now I'm going to pull the highlights down to about 80, and that's going to mostly impact the sky. And then I'm going to pull those shadows all the way up. And now it's starting to look like it's making more sense. And I'm going to pull the whites down just a little bit. 10. Pull the blacks down. I want it real contrasty. And at the same time, I want it to be nice and a little bit hazy, a little bit moody. I guess that's the word I'm going for, a little bit moody. Now I'm going to bump the clarity up. First, I'm going to bump the exposure up because just want to bump that up so everything's making sense here. I'm going to bump the clarity up and make it a little bit gritty if I put it up to 70. So I'm liking that. I'm going to bump the vibrance up to around just 15 or so. Saturation down just a tad, negative 20, 25. And I'm going to do the lens corrections, even though it's not going to completely fix it. It's going to do that. And then you see it blew out the side. I don't really like that. I did like the vignette slightly. So I'm going to put some of it back in a little bit here. And just so you know what we did so far, here's the before and after. Got a real moody thing going on with kind of a teal sky, kind of a vintage feel going on here. Preserved the original image and just added a little bit of extra detail there. You can see those that rust. You can really see it run down the car now, and that's perfect because the car is white, so it really pops. And right now I'm just going to go into the detail in the sharpening and bump that up to about 80 and leave the radius at 1, detail 25. And I'm going to look at this by hitting Alt, hitting the masking up pretty far up there, just so it's getting, basically like getting the edges of everything. You can see the edges there. If I put it all the way up, it's not really doing a whole lot, so I'm going to just pull that back down. 78 seems to work, so I'm going to leave that there. And again, here's the before and after. And now I'm going to round trip this to Photoshop to straighten those angles out, copy and paste that, and transform perspective. And I'm just going to pull that out. I'm going to leave that like that. It looks squashed right now. And then just Control T and pull that up. Kind of mangles, looks mangled for a little bit. And then I'm just going to move this over a little bit. I'm going to save that. Close it. So now what we're working with is that to that. Just straightened out the curvature of the lens there and brought a close-up approximation of how tall the cars actually were. I kind of left them a little bit more flat. Gives a little more of a kind of a mean effect here. Kind of chop the top a little bit, just very slightly. And also, if you notice, the wheels are round again. So now I'm just going to pull some shadows out here. I'm liking the sky how it is, so I'm going to pull some shadows out. I'm going to pull them all the way out, then back down. And maybe bump the contrast a little bit. And so that's affecting mostly the bottom and pretty much none of the sky here. And I'm going to close that. So that's how I edited this photo. I hope you enjoyed it. You probably noticed with this one, I'm definitely not going for accurate color. I'm going for more of an artistic thing here. And I'll just show you a few more of these. This one kind of looks like HDR, even though it's not. I have the clarity bumped the whole way up. That's why. Here's a few more. These little baby cars. These tiny little cars. And that's pretty much it. I hope you really enjoyed this Lightroom edit. I'm going to probably do a lot more of these because I have a lot of different looks for certain types of photos, like outdoor photos, indoor photos, and I don't really always stick with one look. I know a lot of people kind of stick with one look, but I do kind of have a uniform way that I edit everything, and that just kind of pulls it together in a way, I guess. If you look at my Instagram feed right here, if you look at my Instagram feed. Speaking of Instagram, I actually have a thing I do there with the grid where it'll be as minimal as like just 3 pictures across that all kind of go together, or I can go up to 12. So that'd be 3 across, 4 up, and I'll stick with that theme for 12 images. And sometimes it'll be like colors, sometimes it'll be like a contrast curve. Sky's the limit pretty much with Instagram. I just like to tie it all together, and that's what I do on Instagram. Maybe I should do a few tutorials on that because I'm obsessed with Instagram. I forgot to turn my light on. How are you supposed to remember to create more if I don't have that light on? But anyhow, just remember, every single day, create, share, repeat, and keep it awesome. I'll see you next time.